This is not a story about forgiveness.
Tonight, revenge for real, and everything that goes with it.
Love, romance, gambling, drinking, sex.
A real murder in the Hamptons, the glittering weekend getaway for New York's rich and famous.
I bashed his brains in, and he cried like a bitch.
A jailhouse interview like you've never seen. About a love triangle with millions at stake. A philandering husband, Ted Ammon, murdered. His extravagant wife, Generosa, enraged by jealousy.
She went berserk, berserk.
And him, Danny Pelosi, the electrician from the other side of the tracks.
I was a man with a tool belt. I gave her what the rich man couldn't.
Now, after 7 years behind bars, he's giving us everything. Names, dates, details about the murder he says he didn't commit.
Was revenge a part of this crime?
Generosa wanted revenge.
Revenge for real. Sometimes fact is stranger than fiction.
She said he got exactly what he deserved. Period.
Here now, Cynthia McFadden.
Plots of revenge mixed with wealth and murder have always fascinated us, from the ancient Greeks to Shakespeare. Consider the waves made by the new drama Revenge this season. But when the story is fact, not fiction, there's a whole new dimension. Tonight, we bring you here to the glamorous Hamptons for a murder most rare, the first in 20 years. Off-season is cold, desolate, disquieting, especially at a mansion on Middle Lane, where the murder that happened years ago is not forgotten. There's been a trial, but it didn't answer all the questions. This twisted tale began, as many do, with a love story.
When I was young, I'd drive over the 59th Street Bridge. I'd be coming in the morning, it'd still be dark, and all the lights be turning on. I used to say it to the guys in my truck, there's a woman in here. There's a woman in here who's paying these big rents, who's single. I said, she's gonna be gorgeous, and I'm gonna find her.
12 years ago, Danny Pelosi, an electrician from Long Island, did find the woman of his dreams, the beautiful and very wealthy Generosa Ammon. He was working on her Manhattan townhouse.
I used to sleep in my truck in front of the building. She showed up at the job one morning and said, my work is do not sleep in trucks.
Generosa got him a room at the ritzy Stanhope Hotel on Fifth Avenue, where she was staying during the renovations.
All my guys that worked for me did not want me to have an affair with her because they were like, Danny, if you sleep with her, we're gonna get fired.
They went for drinks at the hotel bar. She, a cosmopolitan in a rocks glass. He, a beer.
I could tell you this much. She sat on the couch across from me in the Stanhope, told me 3 times how she was not about to make the first move here. And after the 3rd time, I said, come here. And that's where it started. She was elegant, she was beautiful, she was different.
And she had introduced Danny to a whole new world of luxury, money, and high society splendor. It would be no simple affair. Generosa was not only rich, she was married. Her husband, Ted Ammon, a lawyer and self-made millionaire, had made a fortune in leveraged buyouts. Ted was brilliant, handsome, and a benefactor of the arts. Generosa, who had spent part of her early life in foster care, was an aspiring artist, barely making ends meet in Manhattan real estate, when she met Ted in the early 80s, according to Vanity Fair's Michael Schneerson.
He was a single man and a very wealthy one. She was a rental apartment agent, you know, sort of the lowest rung on the ladder. He was looking for an apartment and made an appointment and apparently forgot about it or just failed to show. And the next day at the office, he got an angry call from this woman who was the rental agent who said, "How dare you stand me up?" And he was sort of charmed. She was fiery.
Ted asked Generosa out on a date. 3 years later, they were married and moved to the elegant and expensive Upper East Side of Manhattan. They adopted twins, Greg and Alexa, who were raised with every luxury, including a private nanny. Generosa occupied herself decorating their many homes, the East Side townhouse, a castle in England, and their East Hampton mansion at 59 Middle Lane, spending and sometimes wasting thousands.
A landscaper went with Generosa to a nursery. They picked out tulips of a particular shade. And as he said to me, you know, tulips actually, the shade changes a little bit from morning to evening, you know, as the light changes. At any rate, they planted these 600 tulips of a particular shade. And over the weekend, he came back to find her, like a crazy woman, ripping out all the tulips because the shade was wrong.
Over time, Generosa's erratic behavior began to poison the marriage, and she was jealous, convinced Ted was having an affair, suspecting he'd had a baby with another woman. Enter Danny Pelosi, the electrician from Center Moriches, a working-class neighborhood on Long Island.
I thought I hit lotto. I really did. I went from a guy who walked into an electrical job to becoming the boss.
Not that she always let him be the boss. She was demanding, a perfectionist, something that annoyed Danny.
She would have us actually build a floor, frame it out, wire it, plumb it. It just wouldn't look right to her. So she'd make you tear it all out. She'd make you tear the whole floor out. Yeah, and do it all over. So that would be $25,000, a workman's dream.
Was she a perfectionist in your personal relationship too?
She wouldn't let me walk down Madison Avenue with white sneakers on.
Because?
It wasn't proper.
There was nothing proper about Danny. In fact, he was a convicted felon, arrested 7 times, imprisoned twice on drunk driving charges.
What did Generosa see in you?
I was a man with a tool belt. I gave her what the rich man couldn't. Yeah. I didn't have to buy her. I could just be me, and this woman liked me for me.
They fell in love. Generosa flaunted her relationship with Danny. Her husband, Ted, knew all about it.
If you're a very vengeful, paranoid, irrational, soon-to-be ex-wife, what better punishment to inflict than shacking up in the Stanhope in a $1,500 a night suite with your new boyfriend, the electrician, and the kids right there in the next room, and having Danny essentially be their surrogate father. It drove Ted absolutely nuts.
Well, of course, Ted was picking up the tab.
Apparently about $70,000
$70,000 a month?
Yeah, just for the Stanhope bills.
Do you think she was trying to get back at him with you?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really rubbing it in his nose, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know how I would react if my ex-wife did that to me, especially when you're fighting over money.
Generosa was convinced Ted was hiding hundreds of millions of dollars and wanted her share. She even had Danny help install surveillance cameras in the house on Middle Lane to spy on Ted.
It was the War of the Roses. He was taking things, and she was looking to catch him. She wanted hard proof to say, look, here's Ted stealing $100,000 worth of wine.
So the way it worked is, from a remote location, you could look at a computer screen and see what was going on in the house, at least where the cameras were.
Generosa would sit at the Stanhope and access the beach house from the Stanhope, yes.
The divorce battle got ugly.
Ted himself had said that Generosa had expressed on more than one occasion her intention to kill him. But he didn't, you know, when your angry wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, says that, how seriously do you take it?
Eventually, Ted and Generosa arrived at the negotiating table. The first offer, $10 million.
Did you say take the deal?
I said, take the money and run. I said, let's do this. I said, come on, where I come from, $10 million? Forget it, I'm good.
Well, she didn't listen to you about the $10 million. She hung in there.
She hung in there, and then, before we knew it, we had an agreement. She had an agreement.
$25 million.
$25 million.
She was right.
She was absolutely right.
It seemed finally Generosa was satisfied. The fighting had come to an end. It was Friday, October 19th, 2001. The final divorce settlement would be signed on Monday. But what happens that weekend changes everything. On Saturday, October 20th, 2001, multimillionaire Ted Ammon is at home in East Hampton. In just 2 days, he'll sign papers finalizing his divorce from his wife, Generosa. That night, he dines alone at a restaurant. Takes a solitary walk. It's dark, and he's spooked. He phones a friend and says he thinks he's being followed. By 10 p.m., he's back at the mansion on Middle Lane, but far from safe. Precisely what happens over the next several hours may never be known. But on Monday, when he misses an appointment in the city, a concerned friend comes to the house in the Hamptons and finds 52-year-old Ted Ammon dead, naked and covered in his own blood, lying on his bedroom floor.
He was bludgeoned in the head.
There are defensive wounds to his hands where clearly he was trying to cover his head. His hands are all broken and fractured.
There was a lot of blood on the floor of the bedroom, leading into the bathroom, and then blood going down the stairs.
What happened to Ted Ammon probably could have killed 3 men, let alone 1. That's how brutal this homicide was.
It was the first murder in East Hampton in 20 years. The exclusive enclave of Wall Street tycoons, A-list actors, and political high rollers is shocked. But for the widow, Generosa, Ted's brutal death was a windfall. She was still technically his wife, and Ted hadn't changed his will. So instead of getting the $25 million divorce settlement, she stood to get the bulk of his entire estate, worth $80 million.
I did reach probably 8 or 10 business associates. I tell you, every one of them thought Generosa had something to do with his murder.
8 or 10
business associates of Ted's, and every one of them was, I mean, the reaction that I heard again and again was, so she finally did it.
Generosa was asked by Ted's family to stay away from his memorial. She didn't even pretend to grieve. In fact, just 3 months after the murder, she married the man with the tool belt, Danny Pelosi. People whisper, is it because husband and wife can't be compelled to testify against each other? Police suspect the newly married couple, but don't arrest them. Both claim to have alibis, to have been in the city, though not with each other, when Ted was murdered. 2 years after the murder in 2003, Danny Pelosi, still the prime suspect, does his first nationally broadcast interview with us.
For the record, let me ask you the question. Did you kill Ted Ammon?
Not at all.
Do you know who killed Ted Ammon?
Not at all.
Well, you couldn't have been Ted Ammon's favorite person.
He never told me I was his enemy.
No, excuse me. We're going way beyond where we were.
During the interview, Danny's lawyers watched from the back of the room.
Excuse me, Cynthia, we're going well into it. I want to stay away from that weekend.
Breaking in several times, instructing him not to discuss details of that weekend. Michael Dowd was Generosa's lawyer.
Did you ask her outright
Oh, sure.
whether or not she was involved in the murder?
Yeah, I asked her. She said absolutely not, in no way, nor would she ever.
As investigators close in, some devastating news for the newlywed couple. Generosa is diagnosed with terminal cancer and is told she only has months to live. For a time, she moves into Danny's house in Center Moriches.
This was her chair, that was my chair. She was sick, she was dying, she had breast cancer.
At this point, Danny and Generosa's marriage began to flounder. The stress of her illness, the murder investigation, and constant battles over money take their toll. In this audio recording, we hear a dying Generosa arguing with Danny.
My feeling is that things have heated up here to a ridiculous degree. And really wondering if I should just move out with the kids. I'm sick, as we all know.
Generosa and Danny separate. She makes it clear she doesn't want him around her or raising her children, cutting him out of her will, in effect paying him off with a $2 million settlement. In August of 2003, 47-year-old Generosa Ammon Pelosi dies. Danny was not there. But he did show up at the funeral parlor, and in a moment right out of a mobster movie, he strolled out with her ashes and headed to the Stanhope Hotel for a final drink.
I could perhaps understand going to the Stanhope Hotel to relive a moment that you had with your late wife. I can even tolerate common sense that you'd take the ashes there and buy a drink that she loved. Please tell me why you needed a New York Post reporter and a photographer to memorialize that moment for the world?
I'm not saying I'm the most normal guy in the world. I do spontaneous, wacky things. My wife had just died. I got a grand jury convening. I got police investigating. It's like, I'm not entitled to be a little wacky.
You do understand, though, why some people think you committed this crime.
No, I don't understand that at all.
You married the widow 3 months after her husband is dead. Instead of inheriting a part of the estate, she ends up inheriting the whole estate.
There is no motive to take a father away from his kids. There's no motive for that.
Danny, can you say a few words up here?
Prosecutors say Danny had plenty of motive, 80 million reasons to want Ted Ammon dead. It was a deadly love-hate triangle. The millionaire, his wife, and her lover. A streetwise tough guy with a very big mouth. Now, 2 of them were dead, and the tough guy, Danny Pelosi, is $2 million richer. He's a smooth operator. Even his father, Bob, knows that.
Danny had a velvet tongue, and he could use it. I mean, he could talk you out of your socks.
Even though Danny's under investigation for murder, he never stops talking.
Danny, can you say a few words up here?
Until finally, 5 months after our interview, the law closes in and arrests him. He's denied bail.
Well, we were just debating time of death.
But prosecutor Janet Elberson's case is far from perfect.
He's an innocent man who's been wrongfully accused.
And Danny can afford the best defense lawyers, like Jerry Shargell.
There's no DNA, there's no blood spatter, there is no fingerprint, there is nothing that ties him to this murder. No forensic evidence at all.
What prosecutors do have is a lot of circumstantial evidence and 3 witnesses who say he confessed. One of them, Danny's on-again, off-again girlfriend, Tracy Riebenfeld.
She described for the jury how he put his finger to his lips, saying shh, and nodding yes at the same time. And she said, well, did you do it? And he said, yeah, kid. He said, I went out there. He said, I bashed his brains in, and he cried like a bitch. She was horrified. She said, well, why would you do that? And he said, because I got a monster in me, and pounded on his chest.
Especially about the children.
Also testifying against Danny, Kay Main, the Ammon children's nanny.
Very traumatic.
She testified Danny came home after a night of gambling and woke her up.
He'd obviously been drinking, that he came up to her on the bed, and he started to whisper in her ear, I killed Ted Ammon,
But in some ways, the most dramatic witness, Danny Pelosi's own father, who was tormented by a conversation he had with Danny at a wedding the weekend Ted Ammon was murdered.
He asked me about if someone wanted to get rid of something, what could they do with it? And I said to him, Danny, in today's world, it's very, very difficult, especially with DNA and the likes of that. If you wanted to take something and put it in the ocean, a fisherman might come along and hook onto it, a dredge may pick it up.
Did you wonder why he was asking?
I didn't want to know, to be honest with you.
What was Danny trying to get rid of? A murder weapon? Bloody clothes? Or maybe the tape from that multi-camera surveillance system inside Ted Ammon's East Hampton mansion? A black box recorder hidden deep in the eaves of the house, which, by the time police got there, was gone.
You absolutely had to know where to look. Almost nobody, besides the people who installed it and the defendant, were aware of its location.
Prosecutors called Danny's father to the stand, a very reluctant witness.
I spoke to my priest, and I told him what I knew, and I was afraid I was going to be asked. And I said, what's going to happen? He says, you can't lie. You've got to tell the truth. I went in there to tell the truth. I raised my right hand to God to say the truth, and I wasn't going to lie.
Bob Pelosi told the jury what Danny had asked him. Did he know how to get rid of something for good?
When you were in the courtroom, did you hear what your son said to you as you were leaving the witness stand?
I hate you. I can't do nothing about that.
That was, I think, a turning point. That was the first turning point in the trial.
But not the last. Despite his lawyer's reservations, Danny Pelosi himself took the stand.
Nobody thought it was a good idea for Danny Pelosi to take the stand, but Danny Pelosi.
Under oath, Pelosi says all those who said he'd confessed were lying. And then his lawyer asked him the question everyone was waiting for.
Did there come a time when Generosa Ammon asked you to murder her husband? And the answer was yes. She first came to him and asked whether he knew anyone who could be hired to murder Ted Ammon. He emphatically stated that he turned down both of those requests.
In your gut, was Generosa Ammon involved in some way?
We did not uncover anything specific that led us to believe that she was present at the scene of this homicide. However, beyond a reasonable doubt, was she aware of it? That question probably will never be answered. I think we need to move on from her and focus on the man who actually killed Ted Ammon, Danny Pelosi.
Prosecutors may have been delighted Pelosi took the stand, but so seemingly was he.
I know everybody questioned me when I said, let's do it.
Our cameras are there when just hours after testifying, Pelosi seems ecstatic, calling his lawyers from jail to gloat.
Everyone was positive.
That's because I told you guys, if I get up there and tell the truth, how the hell can they convict me? I was not about to be the sacrificial lamb for a crime I didn't commit.
But you know, you were very, very good. One of those very strong points of your testimony is when you were explaining the rift with your dad.
Like I said, he's a confused old man. You know, I got nothing against him. As sick as he is, he's still my father.
I can't get him out of this mess. He expected me as dad because I was always there for Danny. No matter what it was, I was there for Danny. This time I let him down. That's a cross I have to carry.
As the case goes to the jury, Pelosi is confident. So are prosecutors. The jury deliberated for 3 days. And then, the verdict.
Guilty second-degree murder.
Guilty.
He said nothing, put his hands in his face. He seemed shocked and stunned by the verdict.
The sentence, 25 years to life. No one is more surprised than Danny Pelosi.
I got convicted for murder. Never saw it coming. Never saw it coming.
Danny Pelosi has spent the last 7 years in prison. He's now in a maximum security lockup in upstate New York. He's had plenty of time to think and plenty more left to say.
I know everything that happened. I know everything that happened.
With no lawyers around to advise him, what does Danny Pelosi say now?
When I tell the truth of the story of the murder in the Hamptons, the real murder on Middle Lane, what led to the murder on Middle Lane? Love, romance, gambling, drinking, sex.
So let's hear the truth.
It's been 7 years since Danny Pelosi was convicted of the murder of multimillionaire Ted Ammon. Now, on the eve of his appeal, he says he's ready to tell all. Details of the murder, who did it, how, and why. And he's pointing the finger at his own now dead wife, Generosa.
The bottom line is I did not kill Ted Ammon. I never did. Generosa did not kill Ted Ammon. She had him killed.
This is how our interview started, and it was just the beginning of an explosive series of new details and accusations aimed mostly at Generosa.
Was revenge a part of this crime?
Generosa wanted revenge. Generosa wanted revenge because of that baby.
The baby Generosa believed Ted Ammon had secretly fathered with his girlfriend.
She went berserk, out of this world, insane, white hatred, psycho killer.
Danny says Generosa was jealous and wanted to make Ted pay, wanted to make him reveal where he had hidden, she believed, millions of dollars in secret assets.
Generosa came to my job one day and offered $50,000 to have her husband beat.
Beaten up?
Yes, beaten up, okay? That's what she wanted. I brought it to other people. I said, hey, man, my girlfriend's offering $50,000. You want to tune up her husband? Huh? It's that easy.
Now let me make sure I understand what tune-up means. Tune-up doesn't mean kill.
Not at all.
Tune-up means...
A tune-up, I'm going to come tune you up. I'm going to smack the hell out of you. Now, I got regular guys working for me, $50,000 to go throw somebody a beating. I'm sorry. Everybody was interested on the job.
So you're saying that there were multiple people who heard this
There were
offer?
multiple people that heard this.
And somebody took her up on it?
Chris took her up on it.
Chris Perino is a former employee who, under pressure from prosecutors, turned state's evidence after Danny Pelosi's trial. Perino confessed to driving with Danny to 59 Middle Lane the night of the murder and said Danny came out of the house with blood on him, saying he had had a fight with Ted Ammon and, quote, I think he's dead. In a plea deal that could hurt Danny's chance of appeal, Perino pled guilty to hindering the prosecution and was sentenced to just 6 months. Danny says Perino is the real killer, and now Danny's out for revenge.
You're coming here, Chris. I'm making sure you come here.
But can Danny prove any of this? And does his story even make sense? Why would she need Chris when she's got you? You seem to think there's nothing wrong with tuning him up for $50,000.
Honest to God, she didn't need Chris. I had no problem with tuning him up. I really didn't. I was going to do it right there in the Stanhope. Huh? With no problem. On me.
Before you could do it, what happens?
I'd get violated on probation. I was on probation for DWI. Okay? I was going to get a year in jail for smacking this guy in the face. It was guaranteed that he was going to call the cops, and that's why Generosa stopped me.
Did Generosa ever tell you that she had hired Chris?
Yeah. How could you not tell me? Chris, I want to get paid.
Did he get paid?
Yeah, he got paid. I paid him. I paid him the balance. Okay, after the murder.
You paid off the man you say was the killer.
I didn't pay off the man. I just transferred the money from Generosa's hands
Well, call
to
it
his
what
hands.
you will. Call it what you will. You made sure he was paid.
Like I said, I'm not innocent in the things that happened after the murder. And this is why I never told my story.
What a story it is. Danny Pelosi says he knows exactly what happened to Ted Ammon that night because of what Perino and Generosa later told him. And because the night of the murder, he watched some of it unfold on a laptop that could access the camera system.
Ted Ammon was dressed when he answered the door and got jacked up against the wall.
By Chris Perino?
Not by Chris Perino, by Dumb and Dumber, the two guys that Chris had do this with him. The two guys that Chris subcontracted the tune-up to.
Do you know their names?
No, I don't know their names. They didn't know that there were 9 cameras installed in there. They had no idea. So they came in, they jacked Ted up, they tuned him up for an hour. They tuned him up. They tuned him up till Generosa and Chris got out there.
Who were you saying killed Ted Ammon?
Ted Ammon was killed by Christopher Perino, and he told me it was an accident. He told me he smacked him in the head with a piece and knocked him out, left him there knocked out. He must have bled to death. Generosa confirmed it.
That night, did she want him dead?
According to the guys there, yes. Generosa gave the order to finish him. Generosa, till the day she died, said he got exactly what he deserved. Period.
Danny says he realized to protect Generosa, he had to get rid of the security tapes, the so-called black box. Remember that wedding when Danny asked his father how he might get rid of something for good? Well, Danny says he meant the black box.
So who took out the video unit? You?
I took out the video unit. I took out that video unit Monday morning. Okay? Ted was already dead. Ted was dead for a whole day and a half when I went there.
What did he do with the black box? He tells us he drove to this canal in Lindenhurst, Long Island, and threw it in.
If I tell you where it is, go get it. Put a dive in the water, take a stick, let me out of here. I'll go get it. I'll bring you right to it. I'll jump in the water, I'll pull it out of mud. I'm told the hard drive may be sealed, just like a black box in an airplane.
We follow his lead under the water next. The more Danny Pelosi talks, the more convoluted the story of the murder on Middle Lane becomes. Now, from behind bars, is he telling the truth? Did he throw critical evidence that could clear him in this canal? Danny seems to have an answer for everything.
I am very intelligent. I am very, very intelligent. If I wanted Ted Ammon killed, I could have drove by him at any time and put one in his head. But I don't shoot people. I'm not a killer. I'm a contractor. I'll take your body and I'll throw you down by a foundation and I'll throw some dirt over it. They'll never find you ever. I sure as ain't gonna kill you where I had a camera system installed.
That black box multi-camera system. Danny says he took from the beach house to protect not himself, but Generosa.
So this is a map, Danny, that you drew for my producer, where you say you threw the
original unit, absolutely.
And if we go there...
If you go there with a diver, I'll pinpoint where it is. And when you pull it up, I pray to God you can see everything I've told you.
Okay, this is actually the map the guy drew, right?
Pelosi's map and description leads us to this canal on Long Island.
You're diving, you're tending, you're running the job, okay? Anybody questions?
ABC News consultant and former FBI profiler Brad Garrett is on the phone with Pelosi at our request, trying to confirm this is the right spot.
Behind me are 3 houses that are split level, wood on the top.
Does one of them have a bow window?
Yes, that's correct.
You're in the right area.
Okay.
The black box Danny says he dumped here looks just like this.
Pretty bulky, okay? I don't think that anybody's going to throw that too far.
So what are the chances you're going to find something down there today?
If it's here, you find it.
Good luck.
The rapid eye security system is just one of the new leads Danny Pelosi says could prove he's innocent. Another, secret audio recordings he made before he was arrested for murder.
Is there anything on those tapes that's going to shed light on whether or not you committed this crime?
I've recorded so much I can't even tell you what's on all of them.
Does Generosa say
Generosa admits, and one of them I know, because I played it back, sure as clear as day, that Danny, you did not do this, huh? And I say to her, yeah, but you're setting me up. It's on the tape. I will let the tapes speak for themselves.
Give us the tape.
Okay?
We listened to the audio recordings he sent us, but heard no confession, and nothing from Generosa saying that Danny didn't do it. Instead, we heard a frail and dying Generosa pleading with Danny not to contest custody of her 2 children.
From what I'm being told, if you see January of next year, we'll be very lucky. I'm very concerned for your children.
Poor Danny, you seem to forget. I'm so lost. These are my children. I make the decisions about my children. They're not your children.
Well, I care about them children.
On this recording, Generosa sounds reasonable, but Danny says in the days before she died, while they were living in Center Moriches and she was on painkillers, Generosa was erratic. if that's true, they both were.
She used to think I was Ted, and she'd try to kill me all over again. Told me right to my face as I'm sitting here talking to you, I killed you. I killed you. And she had a knife that was this long. And I grabbed her by her arm, and I grabbed her by her hair, and I pounded it against the wall and took the knife out of her hand. I said, she's nuts. She's trying to kill me. Huh? That's what I did. But you see how I come across and I explain a story? That scares people.
Danny gave us a list of 6 people who he said would confirm Generosa made that offer of $50,000 to anyone who would beat up Ted. No one would agree to talk to us on camera, though one man did say he remembers hearing the deal. Danny also directed us to Dominic Scalise, his therapist in jail on the DWI charge. Scalise says Danny asked him to listen in on a phone conversation he had with Generosa.
And she was basically responding to him, I know that you're going to be released sooner or later because you're innocent in this, and I'm sorry that I put you in this situation. To me, that meant that she had something to do with Ted's murder, and that Danny was basically being the fall guy.
It's interesting, but doesn't prove anything. Not that Generosa committed the crime, not that Danny didn't. As for Chris Perino, he denies Pelosi's allegations that he committed the murder. He refused to talk to us, saying only, Danny Pelosi destroyed my life. Back at the canal, we watch and wonder.
Well, we have excellent picture up here now.
Will Danny Pelosi's instructions on how to find the black box rapid eye recorder pay off?
But it may or may not still be there, Cynthia, because of corrosion. That may be gone.
Roger that. You're sweeping around the pile. Obviously, you haven't found anything interesting yet.
After 8 hours diving, they do find something. A cash register someone had thrown into the canal, and a few odds and ends.
A bike, some tires, glass. That's about it.
No black box. The next day, we break the news to Danny. Well, Danny, we spent the day at the canal.
Yes!
We didn't find it, Danny.
You got it, right?
No, we didn't find anything except a cash register, Danny, that had nothing to do with you. Danny?
Yeah, I'm here.
You really thought we were going to find it, huh?
Yeah.
So now what?
There's 5 more creeks there. It's there. I know it's there. And maybe you might be done diving, but I'm not.
Danny Pelosi says he needs more time to get together the evidence he needs. So tell me about Danny from a psychological point of view.
What he's trying to do, I believe, is muddy the water as much as possible so it's not as clear that he actually committed this crime, and it could conceivably be somebody else. I call them boomerang personalities, because whatever you throw at them, it hits you in the forehead. It's your fault. There's always an explanation because they never take responsibility for anything they do.
Danny, isn't it possible that what the story you've told me about what happened that night is exactly what happened except for one thing?
Tell me.
That you were in that room.
I can't be in that room. I didn't do the murder. He was already dead.
But you covered it up. Fair enough?
Fair enough. After the murder, yes. Did I protect Generosa? Yes. I'm not guilty of murder. I'm guilty of being an idiot. I'm guilty of being a TV tough guy.
But Danny, right now it's your word. It's not evidence. It's not the gun. It's not the clothes. It's not the rapid eye. It's not the copy. It's nothing. It's your word, Danny. You got to come over with some hard evidence because a jury's already convicted you.
A jury convicted me on a trial that was treated like a circus. You were there. My trial was a joke.
Pelosi insists he's innocent and will prove it one day to the world and to Generosa's children, Greg and Alexa, who were 10 at the time of the murder and are now 21. I mean, their lives were absolutely ripped to shreds.
I know.
How much responsibility do you take for the whole mess?
If I could do it all over, I would have walked out of the 87th Street building right after I got my money and never spent another minute with her.
What started as a love story ended in a twisted tale of greed, blame, and revenge.
Danny, you're never getting out of here. You know that, right?
You want to bet? I'll make a bet. I do gamble. I am getting out of here.
In 2003, you told me that when you met Generosa, you hit the jackpot. You
I hit lotto. I hit lotto. I honestly did. Okay.
Is that how it looks now?
What, now? I fell in a cesspool. And the worst part is, it's my own fault.
Stay tuned for more Revenge for Real.